Hello, I'm live for the first time ever on this channel. I am Professor Elstrom, and I am watching the election results from the Canadian federal election coming in. We're just at the start of the evening, really. Right now, they're starting to return seats out on the east in the Maritimes, Newfoundland. I don't know if they've actually. Oh yeah, they're starting to come in from Atlantic Canada, one or two. And if you have any questions about Canadian politics, feel free to use the chat for that purpose. That's what it's for. This is a strange election in many ways. I doubt we could say that we've seen any election like it, really. In this country, I mean, you could say that every election is unique in some way, right? There's always something that makes it a unique election, but this time, uh, I don't think we've ever seen such a huge swing from uh, everybody expecting the Conservative Party of Canada to come in with a majority government just 6 months ago. It was pretty much a given. Um, And now the projections are for a liberal majority, which is strange. But we live in strange times, and the deciding factor here has been Donald Trump. It's very simple. Uh, the people of Canada were seemingly, in my analysis at least, fed up with Justin Trudeau as prime minister, and the Liberal Party decided that it was time for him to go, and he eventually agreed, and they replaced him very quickly in a very organized fashion with the new party leader, Mark Carney, who is the current Prime Minister of Canada, has been for 40 some days. And that certainly helped the Liberal Party, because the moment Justin Trudeau announced that he was going to depart, that was the moment you could see very clearly in the opinion polls that things started to swing away from the Conservatives. So yeah, since this is my first time uh, doing this kind of thing, we'll see how it goes, won't we? I'm looking to the sideways here because that's where I have my chat and everything. So I'm trying to follow the election coverage. I have CBC up on one screen. I have the chat over on my other screen. Um, so yeah, feel free to ask me any questions about federal politics in Canada. Basically, we have 4 parties in Parliament, 5 really, if you count the Greens, but they don't have official party status. So it's from the right to the left, if you will. It's the Conservative Party, Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. It's the Liberal Party. And then you have the NDP, which is sort of Social Democratic Party. And you have, of course, the Bloc Québécois, which is running only in the province of Quebec, and the Greens contest every election, but generally capture only 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4 seats at most. So they're a small party. This is much anyone who has familiarity with politics in the United Kingdom will recognize the pattern, that you have a couple of really big parties, and then you have smaller parties. NDP and the Greens come to mind. With the Bloc being a bit of a strange animal because it is so concentrated to Quebec that it gets a lot of seats. It doesn't have spread out type of uh, support across the country like the Greens do. So they can capture a lot of seats that way. I can share a screen. Let's see if it's going to allow me to share. Oh, here we go. Boom, there. Nice. Look at that. Now we can follow the results as they're coming in as well. Huh? How about that? So this is reporting from Eastern Canada right now, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, um, PEI, Prince Edward Island. So it's the Atlantic Canada. And so far it's looking good for the Liberals, I guess. I mean, nothing of this is unexpected in the Atlantic area. The Liberals have always been strong, certainly around the cities in Atlantic Canada. So I don't really see anything that makes me jump in any way. And we'll just follow and see what happens here. Feel free to ask me things in chat. As results are coming in. Oh, there we go. PEI. That's Prince Edward Island. And yep, that's another Liberal clinch there. Not surprising. There was a time when the Conservatives could contest. Let's see now. Harper, I think, got some ridings out in the East. I don't remember. It's been such a long time. Heath McDonald. Saw the Green candidate there. I was just switching windows a little bit to check on my other feeds. I want to keep up with everything, as it were. And hopefully catch some trends and whatnot. I have my social media feed, of course. Oh, well, if you've only just arrived to the stream, we're watching the Canadian election results coming in, and we are just at the start of the evening. Let's see what they have to say. Ah, yeah, the struggles of the Green Party. The Green Party in Canada has had a tough time of it, for sure. If Canada had proportional representation, the Green Party of Canada would do much, much better, because I think a lot of people would switch their votes to the Green Party. We have the same electoral system as the United Kingdom, which means that we have first past the post. First past the post means you have one candidate per riding, and whoever gets the most votes, a plurality of the votes, wins the riding. So you don't even have to get the majority of the riding. You just have to get one more than the runner-up. Okay, that we had a map, and I missed. We should talk about the map. Anyway, oh, here we go. Map again. So, that I didn't expect Newfoundland to go conservative. I thought that would go liberal. That's interesting. See if that's a sign of things to come. I don't know yet. Feel free to ask questions in chat. About Canadian politics. There we go. See, you can ask me things. All right. What are we seeing here? So I was expecting Newfoundland to go liberal on the latest projections. So that bucks the trend a little bit. All right, they haven't counted the advanced polls yet. That okay, that figures into this, of course. How long how long will I be streaming? Given that our country is huge, right? Um, we have how many time zones again? Five. So Newfoundland is half an hour ahead of Atlantic Canada, and then we have Atlantic Canada, which is an hour ahead of the Eastern time zone, and that's for Americans out there. That's your East Coast, right? But our East Coast is 1 hour ahead of yours. So our Eastern time is Toronto, Quebec, Ontario, Quebec. And then you have, much like in the US, you have Central Time, Mountain Time, and Pacific Time, right? So that's all our time zones. It's a huge country. And I don't know if I'm going to stay up here long enough to actually watch the counting in BC on the West Coast. One of the classic sort of curses for being a Western Canadian is that they are still voting when the results from Quebec and the Maritimes and Ontario have been calculated. So sometimes Westerners will feel like their votes don't matter because the election was already decided in the East, and I guess that's the curse of being such a big country. Um, But what can we do? We live on a planet. The planet turns, and can't you'd have to either keep us up very late for voting, or get the West Coasters up very very early for voting, for all of us to vote at the same time. And of course, we don't do that. So yeah, we'll see how this develops tonight. Um, the latest polls I saw indicated. Let's see if we can bring that up here. Here we go. 338 Canada. We actually have 343 now because we have more seats. Oh, look at that. It has actually changed quite a bit, the forecasts. This is the latest federal projections then. So what we should be looking for then is, how are things going here in the Maritimes? If Newfoundland goes conservative, then the Liberals are in trouble. So this is like bellwether provinces a little bit here. New Brunswick with 4 blue seats. I did not see that just a week ago or 2 weeks ago. That's new, huh? And BC turning blue in the last week. This was projected to go liberal just a week ago. So things have definitely shifted. This might get closer than expected. Yeah, I saw them up at like 100. The Liberals, I saw them up at like 192 seats. What was it, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, something like that, just at the start of the campaign. And the Conservatives have definitely sort of chiseled, hacked away at the headwinds here. But it still seems like fairly confident for the Liberals to win the election. I would be a bit surprised to see BC go Conservative. I mean, it's 50-50, right? But I guess the dynamics in BC is the interior of BC is not so liberal leaning, maybe more conservative. It's kind of like in California. Though there are areas in like the interior away from Vancouver that could also swing NDP. I can't say I'm an expert on BC federal politics. Alberta going Blue is a tradition in Canada. Alberta always goes blue. Has been like this for at least 40 years. I don't know how much longer. The weird thing here, the very big bombshell here with this particular projection is 6 seats for the Liberals in Alberta. Now, that hasn't happened in any election I can recall. And I've been in the country for 20 years, just about. So that would be a big deal. And that would very much help the Liberals win this race. Yeah, we have these are some interesting projections here, and New Brunswick here was definitely completely red last time I saw it, so that has shifted quite a bit. We'll see how much the Conservatives might have been able to push mobilize voters to come out and support them over the last couple of days. NDP here on this projection has 9 seats, which is not enough to get official party status. So they would lose that. It would be a loss for them this election. And the Green Party would definitely also lose here with only 1 seat. They usually get 2 or 3 or maybe 4. So it's an interesting new map we have here. Let's see what's going on in the world. And yeah, I'm not going to be in for much longer tonight. Thank you very much. but I will pay attention now for a little while at least. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what, not even 100 votes counted yet. That's not much. Yeah. So that's oh sorry. That's some writing results from New Brunswick we just got there, which is not strange because look, it's that time of night. We're counting the East Coast right now. Here we go, Nova Scotia. So this is first past the post in action, folks. If you're just tuning in, Canada's federal elections are going on, and feel free to ask me anything in the chat about these elections. I'll answer to the best of my ability. Uh huh. I don't know him at all. So again, whoever gets the most votes win the seats, right? So if McDonald here gets 59 votes and Jamie Foxx gets 58 votes, then McDonald wins the seat. That's all you got to do in first past the post. The advantages of first past the post is it's super easy for voters to understand. You go to the ballot, you vote for the candidate, you know, check your little. I did that day. I've also been voting in this election, done my civic duty. You check the box, you put it in the ballot box, and then they count it, and whoever has the most votes win. Very easy peasy lemon squeezy. Unlike in all other electoral systems like proportional representation, mixed member party representation, and so on and so forth, like ranked choice voting, I think Australia has, where the algorithms, the equations for counting who gets how many seats is quite different. On the other hand, those other systems tend to represent the popular will more precisely. So there's a difference. And there's been a long discussion among voters and political scientists alike which kind of voting system is the best one. Do you prefer first past the post, or do you prefer proportional representation? In Canada, I've always said that if we were to switch to proportional representation, we also need to change how our non-confidence system works, because we would need something like Germany or Sweden, so you can't just bring down the government all the time through a non-confidence vote, because in a proportional representation system, you're never going to have a majority government, or very, very rarely. It's going to have like once a century. So, yeah, you'd have to switch both the electoral system, how we vote and how votes are counted, and the non-confidence system to get some stability in it. Okay, let's have a look. Oh no, that's not voting. That is commercials. Okay. What else do we have going on here? Checking my feeds. Hashtag Canada elections. I mean, this is a fun. Okay, I don't know how to switch the window right now. I guess I should do it like that. Fun overview. Nope, that's not how I do it. Okay, I'd have to stop the sharing? That's annoying. Oh well. Welcome to Election Night in Canada. Do you have questions about Canadian politics? I'm here to answer them for you. I'm just trying to follow a little bit what's happening in the various feeds, see what people are saying about the elections. It's early yet, and can't really expect too many results or too much activity. Like where I am, it's 9 p.m. as I'm broadcasting this, which means that it is definitely not 9 p.m. I mean, in the East, it's now 8. So I guess, no, the polls will close at 9 for them, won't they? Because I know that the polls in Eastern here in the Maritimes close at 9. So we're going to see a lot more results coming in from the Maritimes now. And the next set of polls closing will, of course, be Ontario, Quebec, in 51 minutes from now. And that's when we're really going to start seeing the major trends and whether or not this projection here pans out. So welcome to Election Night in Canada. Do you have any questions about federal politics in Canada? These are the 5 parties here that I talked about before. Liberals, who are projected to win this election and get a majority, which would be better than Trudeau had. Trudeau had 2 consecutive minority governments. Um, Here we have the Conservatives. Basically, the Liberals and the Conservatives are the two biggest parties in Canada. When we are categorizing parties in political science, we talk about brokerage parties and programmatic parties. Brokerage parties are the types of parties that try to win as big a base as possible. And this is true in both first past the post systems and proportional representation systems. So if you go to Germany or Sweden or Denmark, um, even in those countries that have proportional representation, you will have typically the two biggest parties who tend to be in opposition to each other and tend to contest with each other for power. And then the question is, how many smaller parties are there that will tip the scales in one way or another? And in proportional representation, you get a lot more small parties. In Canada, I mean, you have the same in the UK. You have um, parties representing Scotland and Wales. Um, the Welsh party, Plaid Cymru, I don't know how to pronounce that, is not particularly big, but it's there. And then you also have parties like the Lib Dems and the Greens and so on. So there are similarities in that regard. For us, we have the two programmatic parties that we have in Canada are NDP and the Green Party of Canada. And so they tend to stick closer to a very particular set of ideology, a very a stronger ideological stance, which is attractive to their voters. But it also means that they have trouble broadening their base. And in this system, this electoral system, where strategic voting is so important, where you have to sometimes think about um, if I vote for the party I prefer. Let's say a voter is leaning slightly to the political left. So they could vote for Green Party or NDP or Liberal. They would never consider voting for the Conservatives, for example. But they live in a riding where the Green Party doesn't even have a candidate. And the NDP, well, if you vote too many people in the riding, like if the riding has 100 people and 60 of them split between the Liberals and the NDP, so 30-30 each, then you have 40 people in the middle voting for the Conservatives. Well, then the Conservatives won, even though the riding is more progressive. So in first past the post, you have to be strategic sometimes with your vote. And that really hurts the Green Party and the NDP in every election. Okay, let's have a look at what's happening here. It's still too early to tell anything, really. As they say, these early numbers look good for the Conservatives, but we have to remember very few votes have actually been counted, and I've heard lots of reports of very high numbers of early voting, which was like a week ago. So when those numbers also come in, and apparently then they tend to favor the Liberals. So when those votes come in as well, we might see swings. In elections like this, Again, we had a projection here that says a Liberal majority, which this suggests won't be happening. Again, I think it's too early to tell. But the point here is you only need to win a riding with a few votes, right? So Poilievre and the Conservatives are really strong in these two prairie provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, at least according to this survey. But if that's where most of their votes are coming from, like if you have a riding and in Alberta, for example, and you have 95 out of 100 votes for the Conservatives there, I mean, good for you, I guess. But that also means that maybe you can't win as many ridings in Ontario because, all the people, there could be more people in Canada supporting the Conservative Party than we see reflected in the number of seats won by the Conservatives because they might be so concentrated to the prairie provinces. That's an effect of first past the post. Again, we don't have proportional representation in this country, so that's how that works. Welcome to the stream, everyone. If you're just tuning in, I'm following the Canadian federal election because I live in Canada and I'm interested in politics. And if you don't live in Canada, but you're interested in Canadian election, I guess you come to the right place. And feel free to ask me anything in the chat about Canadian politics, or if you just want to, make your comments about this party is terrible and that party is awesome or something like that. But keep it civil, please. So far, we don't have any chatters, so let's see what's happening out in the world. I'm following the things. Let's see now. We have projected now 17 for the Libs, 11 for the Conservatives. That's still strong for the Conservatives, but again, early in the night. When you see the little star on the ticker there, that means that person is projected to win there. So Rob Moore and Fundy Royal will likely win that seat. This is too early. This is way too close to call, I would think, because when you have a lead of like 50, depends on how big the riding is too, right? But you see 10 of 222 polls reporting. That's just not enough. That is not enough to say anything for sure. 20 of 216. Okay, that they're very confident here. Lead of 302. Let's see what they have to say. Oh, that's the incumbent. I'm sorry. So that's not a projection. Well, you haven't done that before, CBC, so thanks for telling us that. The incumbent. Does everybody know what an incumbent is? Well, an incumbent is the person who held the seat during this last term. Now, we have gone in Canada from 338 seats in the House of Commons. Yes, we call it House of Commons like the British, to 343 seats. So there's going to be some ridings without an incumbent. Okay, let's see. 63 votes leading, 2 out of 179 polls. Way too early to tell anything. This is in New Brunswick. All right, so here we go again with the voter projections, the latest federal projections, according to which the Liberal Party should get a majority. But I've been watching this tracker, and every week for the past 3 weeks, the Liberal majority projection has become weaker and weaker. So yeah, update on April 28th. So that's today. So will, I don't know, Ontario federal Liberal vote +4, ±4. Okay, they've gone down a bit, but so have the Conservatives. The NDP has rallied a bit. That's actually worse for the Liberals than it is for the Conservatives, because they tend to take votes from the Liberals. As a voter, you're not very likely to go from Conservative to NDP. That's a long step. That's a long step. All right, everyone. Hi, welcome everybody to the federal election stream. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat about Canadian politics. Some I'll be able to answer, and some I will just make qualified guesses for, I guess, for as long as I can do this. Let's see what we're on now. Seats to come, 312. 172 needed for a majority. I have coffee. Is it good to have coffee in the night? Well, I'll have the conversation with my brain later. If any of you watching are in Canada or around Canada, feel free to chat your predictions for your riding, for your province, for the country, and let's see where these guesses will take us. We're still early here, but in half an hour we should be getting some more solid results coming in. Someone pinged me somewhere, but who? Oh, completely irrelevant. So what do we have here? Madawaska Restigouche. That's the Conservative lead. So we'll see a lot, I think, in this election, much like in every other country. This was true for the American elections this fall as well. That the major metropolitan areas tend to vote center left, depending on how far left, depends on where you are in the country. And out in the rural areas, people tend to vote conservative. And that has tracked for, I don't know how many elections I've been watching over the past, since I started with political science. Lots. Brexit worked like that. Most of the people who were voting for Brexit in the UK lived outside major metropolitan areas. So Londoners were definitely not wanting a Brexit. And they tended to live in smaller communities and so on and so forth. Same thing with, it's a pattern that repeats itself again and again and again. Now, one thing that broke away from the pattern in the last American election in November was that Trump managed to actually get low-income, low-educated voters. And that hadn't happened before. He had attracted low-education, high-income voters more before. And now he has expanded his voting base. We'll see if Poilievre can do the same thing. Yep. So that's the first clinched seat of the evening, apparently, and that is maybe a little bit of a bellwether that things are going better for the Conservatives than the Liberals would hope for. Still early in the evening, of course, and getting a riding in a rural area for the Conservatives is, that's the kind of ridings they would win. But again, look at the projections here. The projection was that all of Newfoundland and Labrador would go red, would go Liberal. That's 7 seats that they were projected to capture, and they have failed. They have lost a seat there already to the Conservatives. So now they're behind. Now they're not at 186 anymore. They're at 185. So if this continues, maybe we'll have a Liberal minority government, or maybe even a Conservative minority government. So yeah, it's lots at stake here. Lots at stake. If you have just tuned in to the stream, I'm just commenting on the federal election in Canada. Welcome, and pull up a seat, pour yourself a cup, and follow the results as they're coming in. And use the chat. Ask any questions about Canada. If you're not in Canada, I'm happy to answer what you might be curious about. If you are in Canada, I'm still happy to answer any questions you might have. It's certainly a big night. We call it Political Science Christmas in political science because we like following elections. That's what we do. I can't tell. I haven't even decided. I decided basically on a whim to do this live stream today because I just realized, wait a minute, this is interesting stuff, right? So, and how often do we get a Canadian federal election? I should probably have done a live stream on the American election too, but I didn't. Will I be doing live streams on other countries' elections? I know that there is a federal election in Australia coming up in, what is it, May? Something like that. I don't know anything about Australian politics, so I can't give good commentary either than other than general about the election system. Jake Durham, welcome to the stream. Is this surprising the way it's going, or is this expected? I would say I'm a little bit surprised at this moment. I did not expect the Conservatives to grab a seat in Newfoundland. So yeah, that's good for them, maybe. But even as I say that, we have to have all sorts of reservations here. So it's still early for Canadian elections. I actually live in the Canadian East Coast. On the Canadian East Coast, I live in this province here, New Brunswick. So for me, it's 9:30 p.m. That's 2100 hours, 27 minutes in European timestamps. So I don't know how long I'm going to follow this tonight. I'll follow it as long as it's interesting, I guess. But the caveats here is like we have not all polls being completely counted yet. We only have one confirmed seat going that has one riding that has been where counting has been gotten so far that a winner has been projected. We also don't have. I don't know exactly when they will start counting the early votes. We had long lineups of early voters outside the ballots a week ago, and once those votes are counted, that can definitely tip the scale one way or the other. So, yeah, we're in for an interesting night. Not familiar with Canadian politics, maybe aside from Pierre. Well, I mean, if you're not Canadian, I can understand that. If you are Canadian, I can also understand that. We're in a strange moment in Canadian politics, and if you are not a political scientist or a policy wonk, politics nerd, then we're in unknown territory. Heck, we're in unknown territory for us political scientists too. 6 months ago, anybody who was betting money on this kind of stuff would have said Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party will just, he can basically just sleepwalk to a majority government because Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada at the time, and his Liberal Party, people were very fed up with it, right? So he would have just sleepwalked into it. But then two things happened. Justin Trudeau resigned, and Donald Trump was elected in the US. And that changed everything, all the math in Canadian politics right there. You're American. Welcome to the stream, dear neighbor. Yeah, apparently the way Americans chose to put down their ballots in November has changed everything for us up here. Because the Liberal Party, so the Liberal Party has been in power since 2015, so it's 10 years. And it's perfectly normal for a party that's been in power for so long to lose power. Like the trajectory we had 6 months ago with the Liberals deeply underwater was perfectly normal for the cycle. Or, I mean, it was even worse than normal because Justin Trudeau was also very unpopular among Canadians. So they were looking at like potentially catastrophic results. But once Trump was elected, and once he started speaking about Canada as the 51st state, and once he started tearing up the free trade agreement that he made with Canada in his first term of office, Canadians got very, very, very angry. Very angry indeed. And that's why the Liberals are in the lead right now. One of the reasons, of course, Pierre Poilievre has struggled. He has leaned into very much Trump-style politics in the way he talks. Now, by Trump standards and by Republican Party standards in the US, Pierre Poilievre is very, very mild. But by Canadian standards, he sounds way too much like Trump in so many ways for many Canadians to feel comfortable about it. So when Trump got elected and Justin Trudeau left office, Pierre Poilievre had difficulties pivoting to the new political reality. He kept advancing the same slogans as he had before, and that just didn't play well. So he lost so much in the opinion polls that people were wondering if the Conservatives, like, if the Liberals would be able to win a majority government now during the election, going from getting absolutely crushed. They had a minority government until today, and they were looking at having something like 40 or 50 seats left when you looked at the opinion polls 6 months ago. Now, of course, the Liberal Party is the front runner. They're the favorites to win. But as we've just seen here, maybe they won't. Maybe they won't. Maybe the Conservatives can still, make a comeback in the 11th hour. Let's see what they have to say at this particular moment. Still an even race. If you are American or British, you will recognize this type of contest in first past the post, right? The difference from the American system, obviously, is that we have more than two parties. Like you can have independents, of course, running, um, but like in Britain, we have more parties than just the two. Jake Durham. So is the prime minister its own election, or is the prime minister pretty much the majority leader? The prime minister is traditionally the party leader of whatever party wins the most seats in the House of Commons. So it's exactly like in the United Kingdom. When the British go to vote, they vote for a representative in Parliament in the House of Commons, and whichever party gets the most seats uh, forms a government. And we do it exactly the same way. We get minority governments more often than the British do, I think, probably because of the Bloc Québécois, which is very strong in Quebec, of course. We are a bilingual country, and one of the characteristics of our special sort of cultural makeup is the province of Quebec, La Belle Province, um, which is the only French majority province in Canada, and that French language party, has a strong base there. So theoretically, there could be a blind side on who the prime minister is after a certain party wins. I don't know really what you mean by a blind side on that, Jake. It's a good question. Um if this is the outcome here, that the Liberal Party wins 186 votes, and they get then a majority, because that's what the dashed line here says. You need 172 to get a majority. Then it's very obvious the Liberal Party will, in fact, form government. They have the majority of the votes in the House of Commons, and the party leader of the Liberal Party, who is now Mark Carney, then becomes prime minister. He is the prime minister at the moment because he took over after Justin Trudeau, but that was an internal decision of the Liberal Party, right? So, and the British system works the same way. Nobody When Rishi Sunak became the prime minister of the UK, it wasn't because the British people had voted for him. It was because the Conservative Party had voted for him to become a party leader. Let's say that the Liberal Party only gets 166 seats instead of 186. But the CBC here, the Conservative Party, gets 144 seats. They get maybe a little bit better than projection here, but not more than the Liberals. Well, in that case, the Liberal Party still becomes the government, the governing party. So Mark Carney would continue as prime minister, but now he would have a minority government, which means that he would have to ally with one of the other parties in the House of Commons to get his agenda through. So we don't have checks and balances here in Canada. We have fusion of powers. You talk about separation of powers, we talk about fusion of powers. And what does that mean, fusion of powers? Well, it means that if you're the prime minister, you serve as long as you have the confidence of the House of Commons, which means that if you want to pass your budget bill, for example, and the House of Commons says, nope, we don't want that budget bill passed, and there is a majority of votes against it, well, then our government literally has to go to our governor general and ask to have an election, because Parliament has said we don't have confidence in the government. So unlike Americans, who have the president of the United States have 4-year terms, you know exactly how long that president is going to serve, 4 years at a time, and whatever Congress does, short of impeachment, which has never actually happened in American politics. Remember, Nixon was never impeached or convicted. He left, he resigned before anything like that could happen. So, but you have your 4 years for your American president, and even if Congress disagrees with the American president, he stays in power, right? Not so in Canada. If the House of Commons votes against the sitting government, we have a new election. That's what fusion of powers means. So you want to have a majority of seats in the House of Commons so you can be sure that you can govern for the entire mandated period until the next election, in 4 years or so. In Canada, a prime minister can actually trigger elections at any time. So they can gamble a little bit with that too. Yeah, we have to tread the waters up here, Jake. Indeed. I mean, it really depends. If we have a majority government, which we've had a lot of times, but not recently, then the prime minister is so powerful in Canada that I mean, the Chrétien government, that was a liberal government in the 1990s. I think they won 3 consecutive majorities, which was like up to 12 years in power. And the prime minister has so strong powers internally that as long as you keep enough seats in the House of Commons, you can do anything you want, short of violating the Constitution, obviously. So there was even a book written about the friendly dictatorship, about Canadian politics under consecutive majority governments, because that's the level of power. What if there's a tie between the two of the parties? Well, then we can get, or even if they're close in numbers, because you don't even have to have a tie, right? You don't even have to have so we have now 343 seats in Parliament, and that's why you need 172 for a majority. But the mix is also that we have the Bloc Québécois and the NDP and the Greens. So if you have, say, basically what you would have to do then is to try to build voting bloc in, it's not a coalition in the way that like you have in Germany, where you have a government consisting of several different parties together. Germany is forming a coalition government now. But rather, we could form coalitions in Canada too. It's not unconstitutional. We just have never done it. The British, who have exactly the same system as we do, Westminster, they had a coalition between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, wasn't it? For a while, and that kind of backfired on the Lib Dems, but that's a sidetrack. So in theory, a coalition then is when more than one party is part of the government. But of course, there's the government, and then there is the parliament. And the tradition in Canada is that you have to show to the Governor General that you can get your agenda passed. So what Justin Trudeau did with his minority governments was that he made a deal with the NDP. And with that deal, he had enough votes to have a majority in the House of Commons, and he could use that to get his agenda through. So if there is a tie, then or if it's close to a tie, then whatever party manages to build an alliance with some of the other parties in the House of Commons will get to run the government. Will become the prime. So that party will have a prime minister. Well, some dog content. You're very welcome. I'm happy you think it's interesting. So there's a margin of error. I guess, in a sense. I can't think of a single time in Canadian history where there would have been two exactly, like the two major parties got exactly the same number of seats in Parliament. That it would be an interesting scenario to have. The deciding factor there would be how many seats would these other parties get. The Bloc Québécois is basically a party only for Quebec, and it's not openly separatist anymore, as far as I can tell, but kind of, sort of, a little bit. That's the tradition they built on. The NDP would never govern together with the Conservative Party, so the Liberals can feel fairly confident with that. But if the NDP has a bad night, who knows? So yeah, let's have a look. What's happening? Oh, here's some interesting reporting. Ooh. Okay. Lead by 13 votes. So again, first past the post, whoever gets the most votes win. You don't need to have a majority in your riding to win. Just one more vote than the other guy. So PEI, then, for those of you who are not Canadians, is Prince Edward Island, most known for Anne of Green Gables and potatoes. Ah, here we go. New Brunswick. This is my home province. Huh. This is northern New Brunswick now. That part of New Brunswick is French speaking. I don't know what you mean by bipartisan stream. I mean, I have voted in this election, but I ain't telling you what I voted for. I feel like as a commentator, I should try to be slightly neutral and maybe not wear my opinions on my sleeve. I have opinions. We're allowed to have opinions as political scientists, but when we want to do analysis, sometimes we want to look at the dynamics of electoral politics, then my opinions about candidates don't matter much, right? Because it's about the people of Canada. This BQ here, the purple or teal color, I guess. Not purple, teal, definitely teal. That's the Bloc Québécois, of course. So now we have one riding counting in Bloc Québec in Quebec, which means that I see. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure. I mean, isn't there like a lot of content creators who try to gain following by just I don't know rage baiting and stuff like that? I'm a political scientist. I'm not interested in that part. I mean, I have strong opinions on various politicians. If you look at my channel, I did a thing on Trump, which Trump probably didn't like much, um, because he ticked a bunch of boxes for me. But we need still to be able to compare and contrast the various candidates, various political parties to the ideologies that we know exist out in the world and the various way of running government that we know exist out in the world. So um, it's just I don't think I could have it in me to just be partisan for the sake of being partisan. It's one of the things I don't like in modern politics is when people go, "It's okay when my party does it." Like then you don't have any standards at all, or any ideology, or any moral compass, right? Like that's like if you're complaining about the other people doing X, then you should complain about your own party doing X too, right? So okay, here we have a map again. Still Eastern Canada because it's that early in the evening. Yeah, that's a lot of blue. Exactly, Jake. Huh. Hmm. That's the thing. I can see that my writing is, in fact, going liberal by the looks of it, which doesn't surprise me. The liberal candidate in my riding is the incumbent. He's been representing the riding for a long, long time. Uh, they redrew that my riding for this election because Canada has increased in population. So now we have, instead of 338 seats in the House of Commons, we have 343. So my writing was one of those that were redrawn. Um, Jake, so I noticed that there is a Liberal Party and a New Democratic Party. Is that pretty much just different points to the left? Oh, look at that. This is my writing right here, St. John Kennebecasis, with Wayne Long winning again. It's, I don't know how many times he's served this writing for a long time. To your point, Jake, I would say no. And the reason why I would say this is that in political science, we divide parties into two types of parties: brokerage parties, which are the big tent organizations that try to, win power and elections and form governments. And because they're so popular, because they're so big, because they attract, 30-40% of the vote, 25 plus basically, um, they can't be super ideological. They have to negotiate between different factions within the party. So ideology takes second place to winning elections. Um, and then you have programmatic parties, which are tend to be smaller. They tend to be more ideologically pure, and they also tend to do worse in elections. They have like their steady, very loyal voter base, but they can't break out beyond it. So if we look at our projections here again, and this is true for basically every democracy in the world, Germany, the UK, Scandinavia, France, etc., etc. You have two really big parties that tend to fight each other for control over government, and then you have a variable number of smaller parties that are programmatic. So they are more ideologically pure. So in our case, in Canada, NDP and the Green Party, they're more ideologically pure. And the NDP, then, they are social democratic, they would be called in Europe. Um, don't know how you, I guess you would, in the US, it would be the left wing of the Democratic Party, I guess. Whereas the Liberal Party, they call themselves liberal. It means something else in Canada than it means in the US. Uh, I could peg them from, if we go in UK terms, they would be sort of left-leaning conservatives all the way to right-leaning social democrats, I guess, depending on who is in power at any given time. Like we've had Trudeau was slightly more left-leaning. Jean Chrétien in the 1990s was slightly more right-leaning. So it really depends on who is in charge and what is the popular wind. But both the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party tend to be, battle over the center, or that is how it usually has played out. The Conservative Party has been split in the past in Canada. If you go back 20 years, there was two conservative parties, and they were fighting each other. One was more ideologically conservative than the other one, who was a little bit more centrist. And because of that, this was back in the 90s primarily, so 30 years, I guess. And because of that, the Liberals won 3 consecutive majorities. Then the Conservative parties merged into one, so they would stop the vote splitting, and that helped. Um, that helped a lot for and then Stephen Harper could form a conservative government. Yeah, the way of the U.S. Liberal, Democrat, moderate, conservative, Republican. Yeah, exactly. We have, I would say that Pierre Poilievre, as a conservative leader, has played up to the culture wars a lot. He has spoken a lot about being anti-woke. All the speaking points that you would hear from the Republican side in the U.S. these days. But he is, I would say, mild Trumpist compared to Trump or some of the more, we don't have a Stephen Miller in Canada. We don't have anyone here talking about, like, let's deport all the immigrants or all the illegals. We have had some discussions about the border, sure, but it hasn't been as virulent. There's not been any moment where Pierre Poilievre went like they're eating the dogs or anything like that. But he has played up to culture wars, and we've seen some sort of type of language that we are not used to in Canada from the right side, from the Conservative Party supporters. They have been disrupting some Liberal rallies. They have been. We've seen footage of them going with trucks and having flags where it said like F Carney. Well, F, and then you can spell the rest of that word, Carney, which is not something that we've ever had before in Canada, before Pierre Poilievre. And it's one of those signs that this type of culture warrior, very resentful and very aggressive cultural warrior rhetoric has ramped up in Canada as well. When we had in the 80s and 90s, there was never that kind of, you'd never see it from either side on the political spectrum. You didn't have Mulroney supporters go, F Trudeau in the 80s and things like that. That didn't happen. So we tend to have a very quiet conversation about politics in Canada, and polite. We tend to try to be civil. So that kind of culture warrior behavior is new for us, and I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. But let's see how many. Right, that's what we're here to find out. We don't know yet. Maybe there are more people who are comfortable with it than you than these projections say. These three. Rosemary Barton is a commentator with CBC, which is our current corporation. Chantal Lebert is very smart, and so is Andrew Coyne and Althea Raj. Oh yes, Jake. When Quebec and Ontario closes, we'll see enormous amounts of ridings being kept. And this is always like this. That you're trying to use in Canadian politics. We're using the Maritimes as a bellwether for what is to come. Whether liberals or conservatives are underperforming or overperforming, and that will help us try to guess the rest of the country. That's interesting here that they're talking about um, two-party race, which is uncommon for Canada. Again, if we go back to our projections here, like NDP, they are an official party, which means that they have at least 12 seats in the House of Commons right now. So getting 9 seats for them is a very bad night. And that probably means that Jagmeet Singh, the party leader, will resign because he's been a party leader for quite a while and he's never delivered a big victory. The Green Party has always struggled, as I've said before. So, but this is like also a defeat for them. So now someone will look at this, of course, and say, "Oh, but there's the third party, BQ, but that's the Bloc Québécois, and they are only racing in Quebec because they're the French nationalist party, right? The Francophone nationalist, the Québécois nationalist party. So they will pick up a bigger share of seats than their vote share as a proportion of the population because all of their votes are concentrated in just one province, right? But if the BQ also is doing poorly, and we see like all the voters are basically coming into either the conservatives or liberals, that's going to be an interesting night. And I don't know how that's going to end because it's going to be like an election like no other for a long time. We've had the NDP's been around since what, the 70s, more than that, yes, 70s ish. Bloc Québécois since the at least what is it, 90s. I don't remember. I should know these dates off the top of my head, and I can't recall exactly. Have to look it up again. Um, oh, look at that. Uh, yeah, Polymarket has LPC projected 177 seats. That's a slim majority, but it is a majority, and I think the Liberals will be very happy with that. Again, if you're American or if you're from not Canada or if you are a Canadian who hasn't paid attention to politics much, 6 months ago, the Liberal Party was projected to get 40 seats, 40 seats, which would have been an absolute disaster, the worst result the Liberal Party would ever have had in Canadian politics. And now they are in this projection, they have 186. Jake's projection here, 177. That's a majority. They didn't have a majority coming into this election. They had a minority coming into this election. So that would be a huge triumph for them. The Liberal Party, as a political cultural phenomenon, sees itself a little bit like the natural governing party in Canada because it has held power more than any other party in Canada since Confederation in 1867. At the beginning of Canadian democracy, we had only two parties, and then there were like splinters, and so on and so forth. So it was more of an American style two-party system early on. But as time progressed, more parties have joined the fray, as it were. So let's see. 172 for majority. Seats to come, 310. Yep. Still early here. We have another 25 minutes just about to wait until the really big number of seats will be counted. This is a typical election night in Canada. We also usually joke in Canada, certainly in the Maritimes, where I live, the East Coast, that this is the only time in during Canadian politics that the rest of the country pays attention to the Maritimes. Our votes are voted first, and so because none of the other ridings have been counted yet, the entire country is following how we are counting our votes on the Canadian East Coast, because there's literally nothing else to look at. So now we have our moment of glory here in the Maritimes, the Canadian Maritimes, where the entire country is paying attention to us. And in 25 minutes, that will be over, and everybody will forget about us again. That's how it tends to go. But I mean, look at the projection here. This is, again, having a complete Liberal sweep of the Maritimes is not unusual. But there's also these spaces. These areas are like, the Maritimes are fairly rural, but they're culturally different from the prairies. So that's why the Liberals tend to do better in the Maritimes than they do in Alberta, for example. Alberta is the Texas of Canada. It has prairies, it has cows and cowboys, the Calgary Stampede, and it has oil. And it also has the biggest sort of fragment, I guess, of American immigrants during the formative years of Canadian Confederation. And it was the early 1900s when settlers in the US discovered that most of the sort of good, fertile black soil lands had already been staked by as the American expansion to the west already had been staked out, but there was still land to be had in Canada because there were fewer people in Canada. So a lot of Americans who wanted their own land, they just crossed the border in the early 1900s and became ranchers in Alberta. And that's why, that according to our political science theories, fragment theory, this is called, that's why Alberta remains the most American province to date, basically. Isn't that an interesting question, Jake? The election for the U.S. ended about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern. What is the expected time, or at least when a majority almost like? I have no idea. I can't even begin to guess that. It all depends on what's going to come out of Quebec and Ontario here. If it's a close race there, then yeah, we can go for a long night here, because then BC will decide the outcome, basically. If the Liberals can maintain these, can keep the projections going here and win actual Liberal seats in Alberta, which is almost impossible for them on a typical federal election, then that could tip the scale in their favor. But yeah, everything is up in the air. It's your political geography literally split between left and right. You're so boring and predictable, Kenna. Well, nah. Again, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Alberta, yes, always goes conservative. Always. You can have some Liberal or even NDP seats in the big cities in Alberta, like Calgary and Edmonton. But otherwise, they on a federal level, they always go conservative. BC can go either way. In we used to joke about like the Canadian West Coast, BC is the place of all the hippies. Um, they literally were the ones who started growing uh, connoisseur weed apparently before anyone else. And when marijuana was legalized here, cannabis was legalized here in Canada, I think a lot of growers in BC were very happy with that. So BC is not reliably conservative, though BC is kind of split between Vancouver and the rest of the province, which is more rural and hence more conservative. Though there are spots, it depends a little bit on the ethnography too. For example, First Nations, what you in the US call Indians, so Native Americans, tend to vote more left leaning than right leaning. In elections. So in those ridings where you have First Nation um, reservations and such and communities, they will probably go more NDP and liberal. But they are not that many either. So yeah. Which province has legal LSD and drugs? None of them, unfortunately. I mean, should I say unfortunately? Well, I will say that as far as I'm concerned, the entire world should use the Portuguese legislative framework towards drugs and decriminalize all of them and just treat it as a healthcare problem, because it seems to be much more successful. And I mean, we learned from prohibition, or should have learned from prohibition, that what happens when you ban stuff is that you line the pockets of organized crime. So I'm pretty sure that all the cartels in down south are very happy with the war on drugs because they've made a killing from it. That's my analysis, and we can just talk more about that some other time, I guess, but maybe not tonight because yeah, we don't have the only sort of unusual recreational substance we have legalized. Oh yeah, exactly. The CIA. I mean, you're not wrong, Jake. If the government agency can use a piece of legislation to gain more power, they will, right? So because that's innate in organizational behavior. So you might joke about it, but I'm sure they're not unhappy with it. Though there's also going to be a culture about in the DEA, for example, you would have a culture about how drugs are inherently evil and so on and so forth. And I'm not encouraging anyone to take drugs. I'm just saying maybe they're not a criminal problem, but a healthcare problem. But if you are working for the DEA, I don't know if you would ever be able to see that because you have been socialized into the perspective, the organizational culture of that organization, seeing it as a strictly criminal problem, right? But I don't know. I'm just guessing. If anybody from the DEA is listening to this, feel free to say something else. Anyway, let's see what's happening here on the front. As we have more votes coming in, possibly. Yeah, we're still waiting for the next wave, aren't we? 17 minutes to go to the next big voting dump. The BQ seat has disappeared. Have you noticed? The Bloc Québécois seat. Gone now. 23 Libs, 10 Conservatives. Central Nova Scotia, lead for the Conservatives. Interesting. I want to see maps again. Give me maps, CBC. Give me some maps. No maps. The media has to do their interviewing various candidates who won, and a lot of them will only be names that are recognized by the true political nerds. Not even I recognize all the names. Take a cup. We'll be here for a while, or until I fall asleep. So this is now a discussion about the ridings in Ontario that will be so important for the election. Now you're going to see the purple party here, PPC. It's the People's Party of Canada that was formed by Maxime Bernier, who almost became the party leader of the Conservative Party, and then he split off and formed his own political party, which was very, very Trumpian. It's the most Trumpian party we have in terms of most MAGA party, I guess, we have in Canada. They've never ever won a seat anywhere. But they're in the race, and that means that they're going to basically steal votes from the Conservatives. So if it's very close between Conservatives and Liberals in Ontario, then maybe the PPC tips the balance in favor of the Liberals. You never know. These maths here, it's going to get very crazy and feel very random because we have first past the post in Canada. Welcome if you are just joining the stream. I'm just watching the election coverage for the federal elections in Canada. We are waiting for, in about 13 minutes here, the big results coming in from Ontario and Quebec, which will very much set the stage for who might win this election. At this stage, we don't really know. It's very much up in the air because it's so much a two-party race at the moment. It's between the Conservative Party of Pierre Poilievre, which is our right-wing political party, our only big right-wing political party, one of the biggest parties in Canada, and the Liberal Party, which has been in government now for 10 years under Justin Trudeau. It had a minority government until this election, and under the new leader, Mark Carney, they are hoping to pull off a miracle because 6 months ago they were projected to get 40 seats, which would have been the worst election results ever for them. So we'll see. We'll see how this is going to go. It's about to get exciting, folks. And unfortunately, Canada will stop paying attention to the Maritimes again. Sad. What is the energy like? That's an NDP. I don't know which riding he is in. Hmm. That's a Quebec riding. How does it feel like American viewers to hear so much French all at once? We're going to have a lot of French coming. I mean, not this channel. This channel is English language channel, but the names of various writings. It's going to be a lot of French coming in here from Quebec, of course. Oh, there's no audio from the video. Thank you. I did not know that. This is the first time I'm doing this kind of thing, so I have absolutely no idea how to make the audio for the video come through. But that's good to know. I'm listening into the commentary anyway because I want to hear their analysis, and then I'll try to translate it to you guys as best as I can. And once I learn more about the technology of streaming on YouTube, first time I do this, guys, I've never done this before. I will. I don't know if it's even possible to get the audio through. Who knows? But I'm not going to try to figure it out right now. 12 minutes. So Ian Hanomansing here is commenting on how the NDP vote has collapsed in New Brunswick, but that doesn't matter because the seat, none of the seats changed at all. So or there wasn't a whole lot of change in the seats. Okay, this is now they're discussing BC ridings to pay attention to, and that is like so far into the future. So these ridings in BC are on Vancouver Island. They're rural seats. They are very small communities, but they're not voting Conservative or didn't last time. They were voting NDP. They were voting to the left. So no, our political geography is not so simple as the West goes Conservative and the East goes Liberal. It's more complicated than that. 2 seats here for the BQ. Projected, right? Or not projected, in the lead. This is like leading seats. And then we'll see what happens with. So once again, we're looking at the last projection before the polls came in and or opened and people started voting today. 186 seats for the Liberals, 124 for the Conservatives, 23 for the Bloc Québécois, 9 for NDP, and 1 for the Green Party. And so far, can we say if it's matching the projections or not? No, because we've only had the results from the Maritimes, and it's just too early to tell. Welcome to Canada. We have a huge country here. We have Newfoundland, Labrador. It has its own time zone, which is half an hour ahead of everybody else. Yes, half an hour. Why? I don't know. Then we have the rest of the Maritimes here with Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI, Prince Edward Island. We are on Atlantic time, and that is 1 hour ahead of Eastern time, which is Quebec and Ontario. And if you are in the United States, that's your East Coast, right? That's your Eastern time. And then we have Central time, Mountain time, and Pacific time. So we have a lot of time zones, folks on Newfoundland are basically heading to bed soon. And polls haven't even closed, or have they closed? No, they haven't closed. They haven't even closed in BC yet. So that's the nature of Canadian elections. If you think it takes a while for elections to go from east, coast to coast in the U.S., it takes even longer for us. By landmass, I think we're the biggest democracy in the world. We have about 40 million people living in Canada now. Don't know how many registered voters, but I think something of like 10% of registered voters had already voted in the early elections, which was a week ago, which is a lot of ballots that have to be counted. Maybe even up to 20%. There was really long lineups during last weekend in many ridings. When I went to vote today, in my riding, there was no lineups at all. But then I went in the middle of the day because I have my Mondays off generally, so I could do that. Seven minutes. Everybody has popcorn. We need to do a countdown here. Now the BQ has the lead in 2 seats. That's going to be the easternmost Quebecois seats, I guess. BQ tends to do well in rural areas. So the Bloc Québécois, which is not a conservative party necessarily, I would call it more I don't know, a nationalist. I'm not going to say nationalist socialist because that sounds terrible. Um, but it combines nationalism with, I guess, some leftist economic policies, and then some, like, yeah, nationalist identity politics. Quebec is if you go into the province itself. So the Bloc Québécois is running on federal level. On provincial level, the equivalent is the Parti Québécois, and they're running on very identitarian politics, protecting the French identity, but also very anti-immigration in many ways. They have banned the headscarf, the hijab, which technically violates our constitution, but they're using a clause in the constitution called the notwithstanding clause to do so anyway, which is not really what that clause is for, but they are doing it. So, and the Quebecois keep voting them in. So, so it's that kind of mix, maybe like a Danish social democrat, maybe, I don't know. But they tend to have their support outside the major cities. Again, like in so many other cases, if you live in the big cities, maybe not in the city cores, but in the suburbs around there, you tend to vote more center left rather than conservative. You tend to be, most voters in such areas tend to be less anti-immigration, more tolerant towards LGBTQ issues, and diversity and inclusion, and all these things that have been discussed in various national politics, um, and and you can see that in many other countries too. You know, in France, Parisians are not going to vote for the Rassemblement National, Marine Le Pen's party. London did not vote for Brexit, and so on and so forth. And you have that in the US too. The bigger the cities are, the more they tend to vote Democratic, generally speaking, with some variations, of course. And of course, the only place in Alberta where you have a chance to run if you are not a conservative is the big cities like Edmonton and Calgary. So the pattern persists. 4 minutes. Gee, writing results. Okay, so this is Nova Scotia, NS Nova Scotia, and apparently it seems like the Conservatives might take a seat there that they didn't have before. And this is South Shore. So this would be a flip then. If Rip Perkins loses this seat, but the other seat goes to the Conservative, then they've just, exchanged seats between each other. Vote shares. Look at that. This isn't that one writing. This is going to be one of these writings that just tip over ever so slightly to one side or the other. And ah, there we go. Halifax goes Liberal. I'm not surprised. Halifax is, of course, the biggest city in Nova Scotia and the capital of Nova Scotia. So if that pattern that we saw on that picture just a moment ago with 45% vote to the two major party candidates, if that's going to be the party pattern for the night, nobody can tell how this is going to end. We're going to have dozens and dozens of ridings that are just absolutely tipping just on the edge one way or the other. And this might not be done until, I don't know, in the wee hours. In that case, it could be a very long night. I don't know if I'm going to stream that long, my friends, but I will at least be here so we can see Toronto and Quebec, and see if that can give us some kind of indication of where this night is going. 2 minutes, 23 seconds, and I'm already out of my cup almost. I need to have another cup here. soon. It's exciting. 2 minutes. Gee, if are you betting people? I'm not a betting person. Who do you think will come out on top here? I have no idea right now. This is a toss-up. I did not expect this to be a toss-up, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, this doesn't look like a toss-up, does it? It looks liberal majority. You had Jake here commenting earlier. Polymarket predicted a liberal majority of 177 seats. That is not necessarily a comfortable majority, but still a great win for the Liberals. But if we have a lot of ridings with 45% going one way and 45% going another, it could go anywhere. It could, it's anyone's night. I have no idea what to do with that. Seat change in the Atlantic. So 2 seats have they've gained 2 seats, and the Liberals have lost 2 seats. That's not a good start for the Liberals, particularly not given the projections before. What? Now they're saying that the NDP votes in that riding went to the Conservative. And I've just earlier this stream said, yeah, and the NDP voter is not going to vote for the Conservatives because they would rather go to the. But here, that is just what happened. Canadian politics is crazy, folks. Okay, are you ready, guys? So 5 seconds to big voting dump all the way to the Rockies, apparently. Now the polls are closed in so many places. Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. 266 seats added to the count. This is the big haul. Huh? Any bets? No, I'm not betting. I just said that 5 minutes ago. Okay, now we're starting to see the counters go up here. And that those 2 hours that the rest of the country paid attention to the Maritimes are officially over. Okay, that's New Brunswick. So also New Brunswick. So this is again seats in the Atlantic Canada. And look, you have a PPC person running. So the People's Party of Canada, that's the purple sign there. They don't have a full roster. They do not have candidates in every riding, and that goes for the Green Party as well. I think the NDP have candidates in every riding, but there are some like super small parties out there that like in my riding when I was out today, we had a candidate for the Libertarian Party. I didn't even know they would be able to put up a candidate at all. So you will have these, occasional places where there's like a super small party that doesn't have a snowflake's chance in hell of winning a seat, but could spoil chances for one of the 2 major parties to win a seat. You see how the numbers are ticking up immediately here, 26-14 already. And remember that the Conservatives will do very well in Alberta, right? So they can take some losses in the East if they can compensate for that in the West. Oh, we have some results from Saskatchewan in already. Can you even pronounce that province if the province name if you are not Canadian? Um, well, 5 of 183 polls is maybe not, a whole lot of votes counted yet. Um, but she's so far ahead, 1,700 compared to the others. I don't know that that's something anyone can catch up with. So Saskatchewan, of course, a prairie province. How many people here? Where are you all from in the chat? Like, how many of you are Americans, Canadians, elsewhere in the world? Feel free to put it in the chat. Let's see. Let's see what we have. Ah, Quebec, le pays d'en haut. This is a new writing, so no incumbent. Chicoutimi, Le Fjord, again, Quebec. Hey, Texas, how are you? Oh, cool. People from the US paying attention to Canadian politics. Yay! They notice us down south. We're very happy about that. Rivière. So Quebec, then again, it's a three-way race in Quebec between Bloc Québécois, Conservatives, and Liberals. And I'm actually a bit surprised at how well the Conservatives are doing in Quebec. Uh, so Andrew Coyne here is talking about um, how the Bloc has had a bit of a rebound lately. So the Bloc are doing better in Quebec than they were expected to a month ago. Liberals tend to do better in Quebec than conservatives because there's like a bit of a before Bloc Québécois existed in Canada. Uh, Québécois tended to vote for the Liberal Party over the Conservative Party, so you had a little bit of an overlap of language and political party affiliation. Same thing in New Brunswick, northern part of New Brunswick. New Brunswick is the only officially bilingual province in Canada. So we have New Brunswick bilingual, Quebec French. All the other provinces are English. Um, and the vote in Quebec and northern New Brunswick tended to be for the Liberal Party. Then the Bloc Québécois came in and kind of stole the Liberal thunder in Quebec. Ontario now, the most populous province. This, of course, is Ontario has Toronto, uh, the biggest city in the country. Again, the star is the incumbent. And if you see a check mark, then they have been projected to win that seat. 35-23. I think the conservatives are kind of happy with these numbers, uh, because again, we haven't really gotten to. I don't know. Have we got the results in from Alberta yet? Now we're in Manitoba, which is, I guess, the most central of the three prairie provinces. It's right next to Ontario. And Manitoba is usually not as conservative as Alberta. So when we say, all the prairies are conservative, no, the NDP came out of Manitoba. So Manitoba has been ruled by the NDP many times in the past, and it is today as well on provincial level. But the interesting thing is with Canadians, sometimes Canadians vote for one party on the provincial level and a completely different party on the federal level. And this is not about split ballot voting, because in Canada, we don't have a single voting day. So today, for example, we are having a federal election only. There is no provincial election going on anywhere in the country right now. So nobody is voting for their provincial parties right now. We only are voting for federal party, and that's because we have the Westminster system from the UK, right? Which means that the Prime Minister of Canada can trigger an election at any time within a certain span of time. You have to do it. You only have so many years you can sit before you must, but you could trigger an election anytime before that. And the same goes in every province, right? Now, all the premiers of the provinces can do exactly the same thing. So we can't have a single election day the way you do in America, when you have like November 5th. This is election day. That's not how it works here. 37-26-12, one NDP seat. Seems like Pierre Poilievre's rallies have had an effect. Um, I think they're going to be. I don't know if they're going to be pleased with the night necessarily, the Conservatives, but given the pummeling they were taking in the opinion polls over the past month, I think they're feeling more confident looking at these numbers than maybe they would have just a month ago. I wonder what those two NDP seats are. In Quebec, perhaps? So, target numbers here, just for reference again, in the last poll, the Bloc Québécois was projected to get 23 seats. I need to check how many seats they had to remember if that's good or bad. So if this is where the BQ stops with 12 seats, that's a terrible night for them. But I don't think they're going to stop there. That's fair, BMC. That's fair. But in your system in the U.S., you can't trigger an election as like a can a governor call a snap election in a state in the U.S., or do they have set election dates there like on the federal, but a different set election? Because I believe you do like your separation of powers on both federal and state level, right? Well, we are doing our fusion of powers on both federal and provincial level. This looks very good for the Conservatives right now. Still way too soon to call, of course, but Mr. Coyne just said that the Liberals did worse this time in Atlantic Canada than they did last time when they got a minority. So if that bellwether holds out, then we might be looking at a Conservative minority government. Quebec, Châteauguay les Jardins de Napierville. I think I almost said it correctly. My Quebecois is terrible. Let's see. One NDP seat. It's been one or two NDP seats every once in a while. This is a small northern riding in Quebec with many First Nations voters. The contest there, at least one of the candidates is First Nation. Right now, my friends, it looks like we'll get a minority government, not a majority, judging by the results coming in. But it's early times yet, so it still could swing either way. Again, it's going to be those, if we have plenty of ridings with 45% to each major party, then, 2 or 3 votes can make the difference. Montreal, so that area is very important for the Liberals. There we go. Greater Toronto area. We don't have a whole lot of results yet. The typical division here is the outlying areas go Conservatives and the city center goes Liberal. That's how it usually goes. And the suburbs decide a lot there. So, between the outlying areas and the city center, that's going to tip the balance. So it's very important to pay attention to. Southwestern Ontario, close to Detroit in the US. Manitoba, Prairie Province. There's only one riding in Winnipeg? Wow. Regina is the capital of Saskatchewan. It's a Duke Tuscan. Yeah, that's not going to hold. You could get Liberals winning in Calgary, winning in various ridings in Calgary, and Edmonton can definitely have at least one riding for the NDP. It's very left leaning there. Yeah, but then you have the set voting date there. So we don't have set voting dates. Harper tried to legislate a set voting date for Canada, and then he promptly broke his own law. uh, or ignored it. It didn't really. It wasn't a law that had any teeth. So 51% is usually majority territory in vote share nationally. That's a comfortable majority. But with 40% for the conservatives, it all depends on how those seats are distributed. Okay, this is good news for the liberals, folks. This is very good news for the liberals. If the liberals can take seats from the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, then that's a huge boon for them. Yeah, BMC. We also have early voting. We had our early voting 1 week ago. Um, so Mark Carney here. That's the Prime Minister of Canada currently. He replaced Justin Trudeau, and he is the leader of the Liberal Party. And he has previously been the head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, in fact, during Brexit, no less. So, for those of you just tuning in and you're seeing a purple party here with the PPC, that's the People's Party of Canada, which is a very, very small party formed by Maxime Bernier, who almost became the leader of the Conservative Party. But when he didn't become the leader of he split away and formed his own party, and it's a very, very populist, right wing nationalist party, um, an anti-immigration party, very Trumpian in many, many ways. Has never won a seat and will never win a seat. Not a chance. They might steal votes from the conservatives, though. Split votes, not steal votes. But dynamics there. So if we have a two-party race here, as things seem to be shaping up, then we have the liberals who depend on people not voting for the NDP or the Bloc Québécois, and the conservatives who will want people not to vote for the PPC or any other alternatives. The Greens, we haven't seen anything much of the Greens. They are marginal in these elections. They will contest a couple of ridings at best, but they might spoil things for the Liberals in some ridings, much like the NDP or the BQ might. So, for those of you tuning in now, this Canadian election 6 months ago, everybody thought that Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party would win in a landslide, would get a very comfortable majority government, because the Liberal Party of Canada has been in power for 10 years, and Canadians were tired of the Liberal Party, but particularly of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But then Justin Trudeau resigned, and Donald Trump was elected in the United States. And when he started talking about Canada as the 51st state and put in place those tariffs in violation of the very free trade agreement he signed with Canada in his first term of office, um, the population of Canada just rallied to the flag. Uh, the nationalism in this country that we've seen since then, and since this talk of Canada as a 51st state, no appetite for that around here. And if the Liberals win, it's because they replaced Justin Trudeau with Mark Carney, and Donald Trump ruined Pierre Poilievre's chances with his very aggressive rhetoric against Canada. Time to next polls close 6 minutes. Saskatchewan. So that's Prairie Province tends to be more conservative. Certainly in provincial on provincial level, it has a conservative government, much like the Albertan government currently. So we should expect to see again. We go back here to our projections. Saskatchewan and Alberta definitely strongly conservative. Alberta is the most American of all the provinces we have. It's basically our Texas, and because we have we have our cowboys and we have our oil in Alberta, and it tends to always go conservative, except the big cities. It has two big cities. So far, not confirmed yet. The Liberals have picked up 15 seats so far in this election, which is not enough for them to form a majority government. But it would be an amazing result compared to where they were 6 months ago. There we go. Alberta, Calgary, Nose Hill. So this is part of Calgary then. I used to live in Edmonton Southeast. Southwest, I should say. Edmonton Southwest. Well, this is more even than maybe you, because this Alberta Southeast tend to be very conservative as well. The Edmonton ridings that would go Liberal or NDP would be in the city center. Lethbridge is a smaller city in Alberta, but still an important population center. So it's definitely not. It's like the third biggest city, so it's not a rural area as such. So we might be facing another liberal minority. Then see how this teeters all the time, and yeah, this could still be for anyone. I can't predict anything. We wish we could predict things as political scientists, but it's hard because people are people and do things that we don't expect them to do and can't predict that they will do. Stupid people, stop doing things on your own accord. No, don't stop. Do things. Use your freedom of choice. $84, 61, 2 minutes to the next wave of polls. Is that the BC polls? Or is it the Alberta polls? No, we've already seen some Alberta polls coming in. Okay. This apparently is a riding in Alberta where Wetaskiwin. It's not going to remain NDP. That's a rural community. They do not vote NDP there. Okay, so BC in 2 minutes. So in this election also, we have more seats in the House of Commons than before. We had 338. This is why welcome to 338 Canada, right? Because we used to have 338 seats. Now we have 343 seats in the House of Commons because Canada is growing. We have a lot of immigration to this country and a growing population as a result. Ontario, Peterborough. Ontario, our biggest province, both geographically and in terms of population. It's a huge province. Okay, this was riding in the Greater Toronto area that went Liberal last time, but it seems to be leaning Conservative this time. Thank you, BMC. Thanks for coming by and watching the excitement unfold. Have a good night. Okay, Ontario, Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake. I mean, it's 3 out of 202 falls reporting. Way too early to say anything, but we always want to follow everything, right? This is a bit media logic too here. I don't really know why they show writings when they only have a couple of polls out of a couple of hundred showing counted, because it's way too early. And there, all the polls are now closed across the country. "43 ridings in BC, 1 in Yukon. All Canadian polls are now closed, though if you are standing in line in BC or Yukon, stay in line because you will get to vote. So this is the national share of votes across the country. 50% for the Liberals should be a comfortable Liberal majority, usually. But because of the two-party race in this particular, oh, look at that. Plus 17 to the Liberals. Conservatives have lost 5 seats. The BQ lost 11 seats. That's catastrophic for them. NDP lost 1 seat. I mean, we expected them to lose seats. This is starting to look like the Liberal majority that was projected, but it doesn't have the same distribution as the projections. And it's because the bloc collapsed. That is interesting. There you go. This is so important for the Liberals. Plus 14 for the Liberals, minus 11 for the BQ, minus 3 seats for the Conservatives in Quebec. That is something that could really help the Liberals. I'm not going to say this is going to make the Liberals win, but you know, if I'm a Liberal and I'm watching this on election night, I'm gonna jump up and down and celebrate a little bit. You know, have a drink or two, because that is exactly the kind of news you want as a Liberal. So this is an example then from Quebec, Shepherd and Rimouski La Mata. Okay, La Matapedia. Sorry if I'm butchering the name here, but that's another BQ incumbent who seems to be losing out to a Liberal. Now it's early. It's early. I always have to preface it's early. So if you're just joining the stream, welcome. We are watching the Canadian federal elections. It's a very weird race this time, a very weird um, outcome for being Canada. We are used to having 5 parties in our parliament, and we're used to having Bloc Québécois and NDP having maybe 50 seats between the two of them. This is not happening right now. It's a two-party race for the most part. Yes, as an American, perhaps you're not used to seeing like these two extra parties here, but they should have more seats than they have here. They should have a lot more seats, given where the time we are at night here. Um, so this is looking very good for the Liberals. And one interesting piece here for those of you who are not in Canada, again, if you are, feel free to type in chat where you are in the world. We've had a couple of Americans here who've asked questions, which is awesome. We always welcome that here. I always welcome the royal we. Um, because I don't know how many of you watching are in Canada and know much about Canadian politics. Um, but typically, to win in Quebec, you need to be very strongly fluent in French. Naturally, you might think, because it's our French province, La Belle Province. Um, but Mark Carney's French is weak. He spoke better French at the end of the campaign than at the start, but that's only because he started at such a low level. Um, and yet he is seeming to make gains in Quebec, which tells you just how, I guess, anti-Trump Quebecers are, which doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. Um, some of this momentum for the Liberals will be against Trump, vote against Trump, and Mark Carney has tried to turn this election into a referendum on Trump. So the techniques here from the two different parties has been the Liberals have been saying, if you're voting for the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, the party leader, you are voting for someone who is very much like Donald Trump. And the Conservatives have been saying, if you're voting for the Liberals this election, you're voting for someone who is very much like Justin Trudeau. Just like Justin is what Pierre used to say. Welcome, Jesus. Uh, Great to see so many of our southern neighbors tuning in. Um, for your information, dear Americans, family members of the North American family, as it were. Um, if the Liberals win a majority tonight, as they might well do, um, a lot of that is because of Canadian anger against Donald Trump. Um, the talk about Canada as a 51st state has rallied Canadians in a sort of Canadian nationalistic sentiment against that type of politics. And the fact that the Liberals changed party leader from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney meant that the person Canadians didn't like, which was Justin Trudeau, was gone. So those two elements together, Justin Trudeau leaving and Donald Trump being elected in the US as president, has really helped the Liberals back from the dead. So 6 months ago, they were projected to get about 40 seats. 40. And now we're sitting here and looking at them getting closer and closer to the 172 that they need for a majority. So this is a federal election. We do not vote for a president in this country. We don't have a president. We have a king, King Charles III, who's also the king of the United Kingdom, and his representative, the Governor General, of course, who resides in Ottawa. And we are voting for our members of parliament, and then our members of parliament will vote for, look, it's the parliament, House of Commons. Looks exactly like the British one, right? The members of parliament will then elect a prime minister to lead the government. And to be sure that you can run your agenda and get your policies through the House of Commons, yes, it's exactly the same name as in Britain, you need 172 seats in the House of Commons to pass your agenda, to pass your legislation. He says, what is going to happen to Pierre Poilievre? Very good question. My prediction would be that he's done. He has been campaigning against Justin Trudeau since he was elected party leader, and he has failed spectacularly, given that he had 6 months ago, he was predicted to basically sleepwalk to a majority government, and he lost that entire lead in dramatic fashion. Like, I don't know that I can remember any election where someone was projected to win so comfortably, such a landslide so comfortably, and then because of two things changing, just completely fumble it, just this close to the goal line, right? I don't know what sports analogy you want to make with that. Um, but I mean, I can't. Apparently, he is very popular among the rank and file Conservative Party, and he's also fairly young as a party leader. So it's entirely possible that the Conservatives will keep him on just because they like the man. I think that would be a terrible mistake. The way I'm reading this map right now, I mean, here you go. Greater Toronto City Centre goes Liberal, and then outlying areas go Conservative. That's expected, but it's on the margins there that seats can be won and lost. So Pierre Poilievre is popular, but he has leaned into culture war politics. He's leaned into MAGA style politics in some ways, not so much on immigration issues, but in other ways, like stop the woke and such things. And that doesn't seem to sit too well with Canadians. There we go. So a projection now from CBC, Liberal government in Canada, which is an amazing comeback for that party. Purist, you're absolutely right. Welcome from Europe, by the way. I grew up in Europe. I moved from Europe in 2005 to Canada. So it's true here as well. When a party leader loses like that in Canada, typically they resign. But I don't know that we are in the traditional territory in Canada anymore. This election has been so different because of the dynamics with Justin Trudeau leaving and Donald Trump being elected, that all the normal rules seem to be up in the air. Pierre Poilievre has been very, very, centralizing with his leadership style. He's basically held the party whip really hard. He has not allowed journalists to travel with him. He's done the Trump thing with that, saying, the media is the enemy, yada, yada, yada. And because he's leaned so hard into what we call Maple MAGA, which is the Canadian equivalent of American MAGA, I don't know how many other, more traditional style conservatives, social conservatives maybe, are left in the Conservative Party now. I know a few members of Parliament by name, Aitchison, Michael Long. There are some who are, shall I say, more Mulroney style conservatives from the 80s. Our prime minister who signed the free trade agreement with Ronald Reagan back in the 80s, NAFTA. So there are still some conservatives, but I don't know how many they are, and I don't know how many they will be once all the votes are counted and all the seats are assigned. So will the Conservative Party of Canada have a similar dynamic as the Republican Party in the US, where sort of this populist base controls who becomes the party leader? It's not impossible. And if that's so, then Pierre might well stay in office. stay as party leader. Um, if I was Pierre Poilievre and I had lost like that, I would definitely say, "Yeah, okay, this is it. I'm done," and resign before the party could turn on me. I will say that with these results, NDP 3 votes, 3 seats. I think we will see Jagmeet Singh, party leader of the NDP party, of the New Democratic Party, resign after this. He has been party leader probably the longest of any of the party leaders. Let's see now. How long has Francois Blanchet been the leader of BQ? I can't remember off the top of my head. But Jagmeet Singh has never increased the number of seats for the NDP. And this is what his third election. So I think it's time for the NDP to move on from him, and I think he's probably gonna um, say that it's been the honor of my life and I'm resigning. Again, compare the map here with this map. Like Manitoba, very much more red. Here we go, Winnipeg. Winnipeg will not go conservative because it's a big city, right? So the pattern is big cities go liberal with some NDP sprinkling in, probably. Rural areas tend to go more conservative. What? Okay, but there are exceptions, like the Mississippi riding in northern Saskatchewan. That's a primarily First Nations riding, but it tends to be voting conservative. With Calgary, this is where you can win seats if you are not conservative. Same thing with Edmonton. In the cities of Alberta, you can win seats if you are not conservative. Otherwise, it's going to be the conservative. Like all the rural ridings in Alberta go conservative. They always do. This is Nunavut up here, and I'm not surprised to see that go NDP. It is the territory of the Inuit, and they tend to be very left-leaning up there. With the BQ losing big tonight and the Lib picking up a lot of seats in Quebec, is this a seismic shift against any independent leaning in Quebec? Oh, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say seismic shift as such because separatism hasn't really been that strong for a while. We haven't. I think it was stronger 20 years ago, even. Um, Note that on the provincial level, if we go here from the federal level down to the provincial level, let's see now, the Parti Québec, Parti Québécois, this CAQ, PQ is Parti Québécois, and then CAQ is another nationalist party in Quebec. So voters in Quebec can decide to vote for nationalists during provincial elections and liberals in federal elections. And I think that's pretty much what's happening now. So just because they're voting for the liberals in the federal election doesn't mean that they will do the same in the provincial election. I would say curious about the northern Manitoba riding. I don't know enough about Manitoban history, but Manitoba tends to be the most left-leaning of the prairie provinces. So maybe not, though I don't know the history of that exact riding off the top of my head. So the NDP, the party NDP, the New Democratic Party, the Social Democratic Party of Canada, came out of Manitoba. So it's always been slightly more left-leaning than the other. Basically, Alberta is our most right-wing province, and then which is our most left-wing province? It's either Manitoba or BC, depending on what time of day it is, I guess. You shouldn't expect any province to go completely NDP because there's just as a third party, as a small party, as a deeply ideological party, the NDP just can't break through to get that many seats, right? Never been able to. The best they've ever done was to become official opposition under Jack Layton when the Liberals collapsed in Quebec. But yeah, it seems to me CBC News has projected a Liberal government. We'll see if it's going to be a minority or a majority government. Majority words. I've been online for a while. Oh, I haven't decided exactly how long I'll broadcast tonight because I just kind of improvised this and my voice is going. But I'll stay on for at least until uh, let's say 45 past the hour. Um, and then we'll see. It depends on how many more votes they manage to count in the next 20 minutes or so. Now we're having the analysts dividing, discussing between themselves about how things came about. But some of that analysis is going to be the typical guesswork in the moment, right? That's they need to fill the airtime, much like I find myself having to. 5 seats for the NDP now. I'm wondering where these seats are, but I don't have access to their map. Again, even though it looks like a Liberal government here right now, if there are many ridings where you have 45% of voters voting for the Liberals and 45% of voters voting for the Conservatives, then the actual end result of the night can depend on 2 or 3 votes. So after this evening, we should expect at least some ridings. That it always happens in some ridings, but it might be more ridings than usual where we won't get the result for another week or so because it's just so even that they have to recount several times. But by now, the Conservatives had their support from Alberta, for example, and they're still behind. So the biggest loser, well, everybody tonight is a loser except the Liberals, right? The Conservatives, I don't think they're going to manage to form a minority government, which means that Pierre Poilievre then has blown the biggest lead. He was, I mean, if he could have triggered an election in October, he would have become uh, the prime minister. It would have been a walk in the park for him. Pure is not directly related to this election, but have there been any talk of electoral reform this time? I really dislike the first past the post system because of the issues you described. Not much. There was more talk about electoral reform during the Justin Trudeau. Yeah, okay, here you go. I mean, Liberal plus 12, BQ minus 11, Conservative minus 1. This is so important for the Liberals. This is why they've been projected to win. But to your question, George, there was much more talk about electoral reform during the Justin Trudeau years, during the elections when he was running, and he was promising electoral reform. And it's not the first time that has been discussed in Canadian politics. It won't be the last. Someone will always bring up electoral reform every once in a while, and then nobody ever does it. Not even the Conservatives, who in this system have lost more elections than they've won. So you'd think that they would be more interested in changing. But then, eventually they win a majority, and then they go like, oh, but we won this time, so we're going to keep this system now. But this election in particular has been about, um, the Liberals have said, if you're voting Conservative, you're going to get Donald Trump style government in Canada. We don't want that. And the Conservatives have been saying, if you're voting for the Liberals, you're going to get Justin Trudeau style government continuing after 10 years. Poilievre has been talking about the lost Liberal decade. So that has been the single biggest issue of this election. And I think Donald Trump really changed the dynamics of Canadian politics completely. So all other issues put aside, because let's face it, those tariffs, they are so harmful to the Canadian economy and also just to our culture, like how we've always seen ourselves as, family with Americans, best friends and family and neighbors and, strongest allies. We got your back, in the Canadian mind. When 9/11 happened, we took in Americans who couldn't get home because of all the flights were canceled. We were right there in Afghanistan, with our soldiers. Maybe not a lot of soldiers because we don't have a lot of soldiers, but still. But then, this apparent stab in the back, as Canadians will feel like, from Trump against, suddenly painting Canada as like some kind of sneaky business people who are ripping off Americans. Like, really? Um, and all that vitriol about Canada as the 51st state and all that stuff, not popular up here at all. So Canadians have rallied around the flag. This is a rally. We call this in political science a rally to the flag effect. And in this case, the flag is the Liberal Party because Pierre Poilievre sounds too much like Donald Trump. He does slogans. It's not "Make Canada Great Again." He doesn't do that, but he has like "Axe the Tax" or "Stop the Crime." That's an actual slogan. He has "Stop the Crime." Who doesn't want to stop the crime? And anti-woke and so on and so forth. He has like noun the verb type slogans, and that's all he has. He was never able to pivot during this election campaign. He was late, very late in condemning Donald Trump's comments about Canada. So that gave the Liberals a leg up immediately. And then he could never quite pivot to really speak out strongly against Donald Trump, which is probably because a lot of his supporters like Donald Trump. A lot of, if you like Donald Trump in Canada, you would probably go either for Pierre Poilievre or Maxime Bernier on the People's Party. So there's a lot of he's been flirting a lot with that type of populism, Pierre Poilievre, with the culture wars. And I think he's paying for that tonight. A green riding. Look, a green projected win in a riding. That's the one seat they are projected to get according to the projections. Congratulations, Green, you're on the board. It's in one level kind of sad to see it because they have had 3 or 4 MPs, something like that. Not enough to form official party status ever. But I think they're it's fun to see them in Parliament and spread out the opinions a little bit, I guess. In the states. But it seems to me that Quebec has won the race for the Liberals, which is not an unusual type of dynamic in Canadian politics. Um, there are several sort of um, if we were to talk about swing states in Canada, which we can't because we don't have states, but swing ridings, let's say, uh, then typically we would look to Quebec and Ontario, certainly the suburbs around the major cities there, and try to fight it out there. The Conservatives have always had a little bit of an edge in Ontario and a harder climb in Quebec, and the Liberals have like the other way around. BC. Again, as I say, like most of the time, conservatives win rural ridings, and more progressive parties win major city ridings. That's the typical dynamic, generally speaking, in modern democracies. If you look to the UK, France, Germany, and so on and so forth, um, Paris is not voting for Marine Le Pen. Um, but here we have some interesting writings in BC and rural ridings that are going NDP instead. Not a whole lot of seats. They only have 6 lead right now, but it does happen. So just because it's a general pattern doesn't mean that it can be predicted for every single riding. What do you think will be the Libs' foreign policy priority? How will they deal with the present U.S. administration? Well, I think Mark Carney has already set out the direction because he's been the prime minister now since Justin Trudeau resigned, and Yves Francois Blanchet is the party leader for the Bloc Québécois. So winning his own riding is not surprising. Sidebar. Where was I? Oh, right. Liberal foreign policy. So the Liberals changed part of the year earlier this year. Justin Trudeau resigned, and then the Liberals had a leadership race internally in the party, much like it's done in the UK, because we're basing our politics on the UK tradition. And Mark Carney won that with a landslide. He won it with like 85% of the vote, which was much more than anyone expected. And then he has already, like, he hit the ground running. He has already signaled very clearly that he is going to confront Donald Trump. He is not going to take the whole 51st state. We want to speak as sovereign to sovereign, and the whole jokes about Governor Trudeau of Canada did not go down well at all with Canadians, and Mark noted that. And he basically waited for Donald Trump to call him. He did not call Donald Trump first. He also immediately went out on a foreign policy drive. So he left Canada, went to the UK, went to the European Union, spoke to Ukraine, spoke to Denmark, and went up to the northern part of Canada because Arctic sovereignty is an important issue in Canada. Very few people live in the Arctic in Arctic Canada, a few thousand basically, but it's Canadian territory, and geopolitically, it's important for access to the North Pole. And if the snow and ice melts even more in climate change, then you will be able to do shipping up there to very resource rich, very precious minerals up there. So it's economically important. So he went up there as well. And he has been basically running on his credentials as former head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England to manage the economic hardships that we're going to face now because of Trump's tariffs on Canada. So I think he's just going to continue what he started with. Apparently, he said during the election campaign that he did have a productive phone call with President Trump, who at the time did not call Carney a governor. He called Carney a prime minister. So there was an interesting signaling change there in his tweets. And I think that was a good sign for Mark Carney. And I think Canadians like that a lot. He I think his foreign policy, he has not signaled much about increasing defense spending. So a lot of Eastern European countries right now, as some of you I'm sure are know, have increased their defense spending a lot because of the war in Ukraine. I'm thinking about Poland with 5% of GDP, Finland, the Baltic states, Romania buying new fighter jets, and so on and so forth, right? I think Czechia is doing the same. Uh, Canada has not followed suit, and Canada has been weak on defense spending in NATO for decades and decades. We're below 2% still. Well, look at that. Mark Carney has now won his seat in Ontario. He didn't have a seat until now. But again, Justin Trudeau cut the defense spending as well. So we're well below our 2% target to GDP. And I haven't heard, Mark Carney has said that he's going to get up to 2%, but if that's going to be like 2030 or 2029 or something like that, there hasn't been a great sense of urgency. And in the election campaign during the leader debates, they didn't even talk about defense at all, which in my view is bizarre given the situation. Like, if Russia prevails in Ukraine, it's really not that far from Canada. It's just on the other side of the North Pole. They can reach out and touch us. If the United States become hostile to Canada, which nobody wants, I mean, gee. So we are in a very precarious position in Canada. We need allies that are, positively inclined towards us. I think and that is not just in economic sense, also militarily, to dissuade anyone who might want to be aggressive towards us. Which is a situation we haven't been in since the War of 1812. Since we became friends with the Americans, we've been like the safest country on the planet. It's been super convenient to be up here. You can't get here except by air or ship. It's been very convenient to be geographically up here with the strongest ally in the world, the United States, right in our doorstep and our closest buddies, right? But now that the U.S. has turned away from us like this and shocked us completely like this, I think we're all kind of like just feeling a bit and going like, what are we going to do next? Because this is not where we ever expected to be even 6 months ago. So yeah, it's foreign policy is going to be a huge challenge for the new prime minister, or Mark Carney, as it looks like right now, the same prime minister as now. Apparently, the Conservatives have managed to win a few seats in the outer areas around Toronto. Mm-hmm. Well, advanced votes have not been counted yet. So look at that map again. You have a lot of NDP votes in interior BC. I find that interesting. Not necessarily strange. Again, BC is our hippie coast, right? If Parliament becomes hung, what happens? Would BQ and NDP be likely to support a minority government or maybe form a coalition? We have never, ever had a coalition government in this country. It's not unconstitutional. We can definitely do it. The UK did it. We can do it too. But it's just not in our political culture. So the typical situation then is to do what Justin Trudeau did. He had two minority governments back to back, two minority governments, and he relied on the NDP and a little bit the BQ. Then I think this could be, tricky, because if you have this result right now, if this is the final result, it's not going to be, but if this is the final result with 153 seats for the Liberals and 21 for the BQ, then the Liberals would have to rely on the BQ to pass their agenda, which would give a potentially separatist, even though they have lost so many seats, a lot of say in policy going forward, which would be a problem for the Liberals, because they would basically be kind of held hostage by the BQ. That is an interesting situation in that case. Until now, they were able to rely on the NDP instead. But the NDP has been doing so poorly this time. The Liberals need another, 16 seats to get to a majority. There's 47 ridings where enough votes have not been counted yet. So it's, but yeah, to your question, Joris, there would not be a coalition. The ruling party, I don't think there would be, because we never had. But the ruling party would have to rely on like a parliamentary alliance, a parliamentary agreement. Vote change in BC. Oh, look at that. Conservatives up by 9%, and the Liberals up by 15%. And then NDP has collapsed. So indeed a two-party race this time. And the Greens have taken a shellacking too. Yeah, that's intense for all the smaller parties, basically. Richmond East, yeah, that doesn't surprise me really. They went from 19% to 3% in this riding. The NDP did, and apparently the Conservatives benefited great from that. Well, my friends, I have been streaming now for 3 hours, and I'm feeling it in my head and my throat. We don't have a final count yet. There's still 40 ridings left to count, and we're not going to get that. This is the nature of Canadian elections. I live on the Canadian East Coast. I live in the Maritimes. I live out here in New Brunswick. So it's quite late for me, almost midnight. So I'm going to say thank you guys so much for tuning in and following the elections. And feel free to keep asking me questions in the comment section afterwards. And I'm going to see you guys next time. I have a next video, again on political decision making that I'm going to record this week. We're going to go to meso level decision making. Organizations and so on, and yeah, we'll see what will happen here. I still don't know if it's going to be a minority or majority. It's anyone's guess. Thank you guys, and have a great night if you are in Europe, because if you are up at this hour in Europe, you are a champion, or maybe you just got up because it's morning. I don't know. And for those of you on the Pacific side, I guess you will pick up more news than I will until I wake up in the morning. See you guys later. Thank you so much for tuning in.